Welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. My name is Michael Willer as Scarlett Johansson today. little teaser for you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, my name is Don. I'm a big chubby guy living here in sunny Hollywood, and I'm proud to announce that Scarlett Johansson will be playing my part in the biopic of my life.
The biopic? I mean, like Jamie Summers?
I love biopic.
He's the one person where that joke works.
Hi, I'm Daniel Laverio, author, public speaker, and chubby chaser. And today I'm going to be interviewing Scarlett Johansson. I'm very excited.
That's impressive.
I'm Trevor Keyson. I'm a super chub, and I'm still trying to squeeze into the Black Widow suit.
You need a little more extra time on stage. Somebody else vamp.
If you're hearing
I've
that
got my
squeaky
left
sound.
calf into mine. You know? There isn't enough baby powder in the world.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're bringing you some chaotic in-person energy. That's what we always love to do. It's been a while.
It has
been a little.
Yeah.
It's been a minute. We want to thank our the people who help keep the show going. That would be Bearskin, the one-stop shop for all of your underwear and sexy undergarment needs. You can help support the show and get yourself some sexy underwear by using the promo code BigFatGayPod. Get yourself 15% off. It's everybody wins. We also have Big Fig mattresses as usual.
They're
Nothing usual about our big
they're in our back room, and we got a whole heap of them, a whole stack.
Yeah, we'll send you one right away. You can find the affiliate link on our website to Big Fig mattresses if you would like a discount on your purchase of a super comfy back-supporting mattress for yourself and your partner.
And also thank you to our patrons for always Patreoning and listening to our cutting room floor, our minisodes, our little behind-the-scenes video.
Yeah.
You can see a behind-the-scenes video where Don
talks about
a jockstrap adventure for this episode, and many more things coming. And just thank you to the listener for always listening.
All right. Well, with that, let's dive into the show. It feels so good to be on the same page while the music is playing.
Yes.
I am incapable of not picturing penguins with jazz hands sliding in at the end of this song.
So this is I don't even know how to, I have a lot of feelings about this next story from ABC. Former Abercrombie & Fitch CEO charged with sex trafficking over a dozen victims.
You know what I picture here? I picture Uncle Vernon with his fist raised and his face absolutely apoplectic red saying, "Justice."
I mean, it is kind
That's
of like...
good.
It couldn't happen to a scummier guy.
For those of you who don't remember, this is the former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch, who originally made headlines back in, I guess,
maybe 2000.
100 years ago.
Yeah, not that long ago, but talking about how, like, well, of course we don't carry large sizes. We wouldn't want fat people wearing our clothes. It would look bad for the people who do buy our
And
clothes.
it's not entirely shocking that a store that used to hire teenage boys to stand shirtless outside of their stores to lure people in. And I think also they did have female graders, but I feel like they were
in the back.
It was pretty.
And the other scandal about it was that you had to be white, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
They hired minority people. They just put them in the back room.
They started with East Asians, and then they kind of expanded from there.
Yeah.
So this is a worldwide sex trafficking ring. It used to exist. Now this was not current. They just got caught. Right. This was like
they didn't just start. This wasn't a startup that got shut down. No.
So this started in late 2008, and it was this trio of people from Abercrombie & Fitch.
Yeah.
Well, sort of. It was the CEO, his
Partner,
boyfriend, and
Matthew Smith,
and
a lawyer,
and somebody kind of running that business, who I don't think worked for Abercrombie & Fitch. But the whole point is that Abercrombie & Fitch was the lure. The lure was, come model, hey, you're really cute. You should try out for our stores, and you can make a lot of money as our model. But, we will have to see you perform sex acts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the way that the prosecutor framed it.
Yeah.
Let's see. As we said in our lawsuit, this was an Abercrombie-run sex trafficking organization that permeated throughout the company, and allowed the three individuals arrested to victimize dozens and dozens of young aspiring male models. So like they're very much pinning this on the organization, which was run by these three people or two people.
Well, yeah.
And that was the lure for the victims, was because it was just, I think
He didn't just happen to work for Abercrombie.
Yeah. Right. And that was just like an ancillary, like, well,
No, I think our younger listeners don't really get it is such a specific, I can picture, I can smell because the Abercrombie store, they were just pumping in the cologne and these black and white photos of these, beautiful young men.
Yeah. Very physical male ideals of the time.
Yeah. They were New England white boys with abs, like they just come off of rowing.
Yeah. Like imagine like somebody who had just gotten off of they just gotten shore leave from, the ship that they work on. But they don't have an undershirt. So it's just bare abs underneath their like pea coat and hat.
And it's so, I don't know, there's so many layers of terrible and just also like weird, I don't know. But for me, just like, it's a nostalgic horror. Because it's just so
walk me through that.
So it is, because it is such a like Americana teen, like it was the ideal they were trying to sell.
To be fair, not teen, but college.
Well, I would say teen, because if you're presenting college, your target audience is teen.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
Yeah,
but
we don't
want to make it sound like the models were 15.
Oh yeah,
no.
That's CK. Right. That's Calvin Klein.
That was Calvin Klein.
Yeah. No, but it is. I think I think they probably went through high school shopping at Abercrombie, or wanting to be the black and white abs on the wall.
Yeah. They always had that weird thing going on though, where like they were presenting them as though they were boy next door, but oozing sex. Yeah. So it's this weird contradiction.
It's what you wanted the boy next door to ooze.
Yeah.
I'm still in this horror, this teen Americana horror. The stores were weird because it had like they were dark and they had like shutters. Yeah.
It was all about the spotlighting.
It was like a club atmosphere.
But anyway, this is a guy who institutionally shat on our community and shat on our community members individually. Yeah. So couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Hope you burn in hell.
It is interesting.
Wishing you the best.
To peel back and just see how much worse things actually are when they're already just terrible on the surface.
Yeah.
Like a rotten onion.
So we hope to see them hang for this. They haven't actually been convicted yet.
I don't think they're going to quite go to the gallows, but I do hope there is justice and payout for the victims.
I'm also curious to see if the sexism of the case comes out, where like
that is interesting.
Yeah, because it was male victims. I'm curious if there's less interest in punishment.
Well, I wonder. I think it's this. I think because it's male victims, it's why it's taken so long.
Yeah.
The whole thing that now that they're unearthing with the Menendez case is that the idea of a male sex victim was like, nuh-uh, that didn't happen. I mean, a strong strapping boy like you, how could you possibly be taken advantage of?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oof.
Yeah.
And if you're gay anyway, well, then didn't you really want it?
I'm curious.
There's that.
I'm curious how they're going to
Don't you think it's not there?
No, I believe it. I'm just curious how they're going to try and frame it in the defense. Anyway,
let's
get out of that into something much more delightful and cheerful.
Hey!
The Guardian.
We're skipping the next story.
Yes.
Well, when you want things to go from bad to worse, just look up the British tabloids.
So the unemployed could be given weight loss jabs, as in needles,
injections,
to get back to work, says West Streeting. Health Secretary announces trials to assess impact of medicines such as semaglutide on worklessness.
So basically the deal is this. The National Health Service has decided that in order to get their costs down, because they've been providing both unemployment and care for very fat people, they would eliminate the very fat people by forcing them to take semaglutides in order to get their weight down, and side effects or desires be damned. Because if we're paying for it, and if you look further down in the article, there is a sort of naysayer, because she is like an obesity researcher. And she talks about how that she's made uncomfortable by the idea that it's not about people's health or quality of life. It's about their economic contribution.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that their economic contribution has been compromised by this thing called obesity. So we're going to get rid of that by forcing them to take these injections.
This is so unambiguously eliminate obese people, fat people, whatever.
Well, I think you're going a little far calling them people, Michael, because we're not really concerned about the people. We're concerned about productivity.
Well, and it's so weird because they cite saying that obese people are more likely. It's like 4 work days out a year or more because they're just so fat they can't work. And it's not looking at they might be disabled. They might have other health issues going on and just focusing on, okay, clearly the obesity is the problem, not a fat-phobic society that has other unemployed people who aren't able to get jobs because they are being discriminated against because they're fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing that drove me crazy. It's like just the concept of it, that it's going to be easier for them to medicate an entire segment of their society rather than address the shitty attitudes of the other people that are oppressing them.
Let me tell you something, boys and boys. This is not unique to the UK. In America, there is a movement called Obesity First, which is a medical movement about advocating before you treat anything else, you must treat obesity.
Oh, God.
And because isn't it really Occam's razor, obviously the underlying cause of everything? And it's basically a step backward. It's a backlash against people saying that there could possibly be other problems with someone besides their being fat. And so I think this is consonant with the British approach, which is, well, the first thing we have to do is make them stop being fat, and then we can treat and look at anything else.
Mm-hmm. But ideally, when they stop being fat, they'll be able to get their asses back to work.
Well, here's the deal. Yes, that's ideal. But also, and I think that the thing that no one's saying is that once you eliminate the obesity, then we can be convinced that the illness isn't their fault.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because all through this British article...
You have to justify your treatment. If you're not being treated for fatness, then you have to justify whatever else we're treating you for.
Well, it's obviously no point. Yeah. I mean, if you're fat, we can't cure you.
That's very much where they were coming from.
Yeah. And they talk about how, the British public should not be forced to pay for bad lifestyle choices.
Right.
As if every fat person is fat because of a bad lifestyle choice.
Right. Yeah.
So if you drink alcohol, can we prevent you from getting liver treatments on the public dime?
Yeah.
If you smoke, can we just leave your
my
lungs
God.
off of the
smoking
healthcare system?
in the UK is unfucking believable.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't think they track that, because they do say in this article that the health costs of obesity are bigger than that for smoking. But what they don't say is that if you have any problem whatsoever and you're fat, they attribute it. Whereas with smoking, it's like if they're getting treated for acne. Well, they don't say, oh, it's smoker's acne.
Right. They're not taking you smoke and then assigning every possible health problem you have to the fact that you smoke.
Smoking.
Yeah. And I would like to know how they're defining weight-associated illnesses.
Oh, you're fat and ill at the same time.
I have gone into the doctor's office for strep throat.
Yep.
And been told that I need to lose weight.
Absolutely. No, it is the confluence of fat plus any ailment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what constitutes an obesity-related disease.
No, Don, what you don't realize is that you had obese strep throat, which is very different from what I would get as strep throat.
Yeah.
You've got to be very careful.
Well, the main difference, Michael, is that it's his fault, but not yours.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, when I first moved to LA and I had a sinus infection, I had a doctor who's like, okay, well, we need to get your weight under control. I'm like, yeah, but can I have something for my sinus infection?
Yeah, and she talked about the benefits to me because I needed blood pressure medication. And she was talking about we could give you meds, but what you really need is veganism.
Veganism.
Yes, veganism will cure all your ills.
Wow.
Oh, boy. I promise this episode gets better, people.
No, it's shocking. And
much better. Much better.
It gets much better.
It's shocking and frustrating, but also not just because it's the UK. And I just feel like some of the worst stories we share are news from the UK related to the Brits battling obesity.
It does seem to be like there's an actual hatred for fat people in the UK. I wonder, is there a cultural factor here?
No, I've talked with this about many people. It is a cultural bias that being mean and nasty is just part of the authentic nature of the culture.
Okay.
You see this in the media all the time. You see it in the British version of a show versus the American version of a show. You see it in Harry Potter.
Well, this is making me sad.
Yeah.
Eagle, take me away. Fat Watch 2024. Soaring, flying.
I forgot how much louder that eagle sounds in person.
I just remember at Bigger Vegas when it went out over the speakers,
everyone was
the audience ducked.
People cowered.
As they should.
So saving us from this downer UK health story, we have
this so much.
Guy Branam, who I shared this on social media when it came out, but I thought this was the perfect pairing to that story.
Yeah.
Guy Branam talking about being gifted.
I have always been fat. It came to me effortlessly, like a calling. sometimes people, usually doctors, will say to me, hey, Guy, have you considered losing the weight? And no one ever says to Barbara Streisand, have you considered being bad at singing? And I know you're probably saying, but Guy, being good at singing doesn't increase your likelihood of death. You tell that to Amy Winehouse. You tell that to Aaliyah. You tell that to Dwayne Allman, I think. You tell that to Kurt Cobain if you consider that to be good singing.
I love that so much.
It's such a reversal. It's such a refreshing reversal.
Yes, it comes to me effortlessly. And the other thing, this is a minor thing, but the way he said it, have you considered losing the weight? And I know that's a common turn of phrase, but it's so interesting how the weight, because it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It's not part of you. Yeah. It's this extra thing that shouldn't be part of you because it's not you, it's the weight.
Yeah, but it's like the weight is such a part of who I am. If I ever lost all of my fat, in my head, I'm still going to be a fat guy the rest of my life because it's just part of me.
Well, right, but using the article as this distancing tool, it's sort of like the gay. Can you just get rid of the gay, Michael?
Which one?
Not you, but the gay.
I highly recommend that you check out Guy Branam's Instagram. I'm sure he has like a TikTok.
Well, his Instagram, I recommend you buy his book. I recommend you buy his album.
Yeah. So this is just one tiny clip of some of his stand-up that he's done. And it's, as you can imagine, it's phenomenal. And we love him and highly support him.
Yes.
And now more than ever, we need comedy in our veins, in our hearts.
Please.
And towards that end,
well, I have the honor of introducing our very special guest, Chris Grace. Although you may know him better as Jerry, Sandra's love interest from the hit NBC series Superstore, Chris Grace describes himself as a fat and gay and America's 88th most beloved Chinese actor in his stage show called Chris Grace as Scarlett Johansson, which is now streaming on Dropout. It's inspired by the actress's infamous starring role in the 2017 Ghost in the Shell. Chris Grace as Scarlett Johansson reimagines what is and isn't possible or appropriate in the life of an artist. So welcome, Chris.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
Thanks for being on the show.
A one-man show that I created that would not exist without support from Trevor. Wait, you're in the credits.
Yes.
Yes.
how is
what?
Trevor involved with
Oh,
this?
you don't know
First I've
this?
heard.
Hold on.
Yes.
What?
Wow.
So I first heard about the show when you were kickstarting it. I just remember seeing it was an illustration, right? Just like a photo real illustration of you.
Yes.
In the jumpsuit.
Sort of similar to what ended up being the final art. And also that was, everybody says that that's AI. That all happened before the AI thing.
Right.
I actually hired a person on Fiverr, but it wasn't $5. It wasn't that cheap actually.
No, it doesn't look cheap at all.
But I hired a human being to do a oil painting style treatment of a photo that I'd taken. And then as soon as it came out, people were like, oh, that was great. Which AI robot did you
Boo.
But,
Which is a real kick in the face to the artist who actually painted
yes.
that.
Yeah.
So I had a Kickstarter for it, and one of the more generous supporters was Trevor. And then I made sure that they were in the thanked part of the Dropout special.
Yeah. I was familiar with you already, and when I saw Chris Grace's Scarlett Johansson, I'm like, yes, immediately. Yes.
Say no more.
Do it. Make it happen. So people, I think, probably know you best from Superstore.
Yeah.
But I think also you have had a wide career in improv and your Game of Thrones musical. So tell us about kind of your involvement with It's Baby Wants Candy and Game of Thrones, and kind of give us a rundown of that.
So first of all, thank you for your $30,000 contribution. Did you know the amount? I don't know if you knew that. It's a $30,000 recurring monthly contribution.
Trevor, I thought it was twice that.
So a long time ago, I heard Conan O'Brien talk about a career in show business being creating a mosaic of different things and building up a full picture of a career, as opposed to a singular, such as, oh, I'm only going to be in movies. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything else. And so I've done so many different things that are all sort of revolving around comedy and theater and acting. So I've done a lot of musical improv with Baby Wants Candy. And that's actually how I ended up going to Edinburgh Fringe a lot. Through Baby Wants Candy, we wrote parody of Game of Thrones called Thrones, the Musical Parody that toured a bunch of places. The last big thing we did was it sat down for a month at the Sydney Opera House.
Ooh, wow.
Which was crazy.
Oh my God, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, and aren't you taking Chris Grace as Scarlett Johansson to the Kennedy Center?
Yes, next July. It's wild.
That's amazing.
And also Madison, Wisconsin somewhere, right?
Because in January.
We actually have like a little contingent of listeners in Madison.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Go see it. Yeah.
I'm going to be at the Overture Center in Madison in January. I think it's January. Baby Wants Candy is also doing it. So it's like on the 11th is Baby Wants Candy. Basically, the Overture, they wanted to create a mini Fringe. So
nice.
It's us, me doing the solo show. I think the Kinsey Six are playing.
Nice.
So it's like you could go for a weekend and see a whole bunch of shows.
That's really very cool.
And then I guess I'll just shout out if anybody in Madison or Milwaukee on the Monday wants to play Blood on the Clock Tower with me at a friend's house in Milwaukee.
Wow.
I mean, if they're listening to this podcast, they're probably hot.
What's the date for that?
I think that's the 13th of January.
Okay.
I have to figure out how to get from Madison to Milwaukee, but I don't think it's that far.
Well, they both begin with M, so how far can it be?
Yeah, it's just a side note. I played this game a lot, Blood on the Clock Tower. And there was a friend of mine who went to a convention and had a suboptimal experience. And so a lot of us in the Clock Tower world have rallied to be like, let's go to your place and run the game and have fun doing it.
Yeah.
And also I think they are big and gay as well. So yes.
I wonder, so how do you go from that mosaic to, and I don't know how this occurs for you in your life, but I think most people will know you from Superstore.
Yeah.
So how does that mosaic play into getting the role on Superstore as Sandra's love interest?
Superstore, that came out of me auditioning for a bunch of commercials here in the LA and auditioning for small roles. And I auditioned for a role in an episode of Superstore that I did not get, which if you're a Superstore fanatic, there's an episode about a youth group leader who I believe Sandra suspects of shoplifting or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And they sort of corner him.
Yes.
And they ask him, what's the deal with all these things we found in your pockets? And he has an explanation for all of it.
Yeah.
So I auditioned for that role, didn't get it. And then out of nowhere, they just wrote the Jerry part for me.
Oh, how lovely.
That's awesome.
And I mean, probably because, later in the show, they say that me and Kaliko, who plays Sandra, look alike. But they just created the role for me. I didn't have to audition for it. And I think
that's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah, I think they, I'm assuming they liked what I did in the audition for the other role. And then I think they wanted some kind of love interest for Sandra going into this episode called Ladies Who Lunch in season 2, where they go to the smokehouse in Burbank.
Oh, right.
And I think they wanted some intrigue because they were creating this kind of crazy backstory for Sandra where she was lying all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And creating this whole histories with other people.
Oh, wow.
And I will say that my entire run in Superstore is only because Kaliko is such a good actor that they expanded her role. And they wanted to add more backstory for her.
Yeah. She was a great
really
part of
was.
that show.
She has, I think season 1 or 2, she has one scene where she gives like a really intense, weird monologue about and I think from that point they thought, we need to give her more to do. And so I think I was part of that.
So Don and I did a mini-sode talking about kind of like fat characters in TV, and we talked about Superstore a lot because so Sandra is, I feel like, such a wonderful character because she's like a fat character, but she's also just like, there's so many layers of things going on and like such a messy character in so many ways that it's just like such a fun role. And I feel like there's so many terrible fat characters on TV where it's like, well, they're fat, so obviously they're terrible and like they're a bad person.
Or their fatness is why they're a character.
Yes. Yeah. And to have a character who is like complicated and messy, but also just, and they happen to be fat, and that's like, it's not because they're fat.
Right. You don't like the penguin on?
Oh my God.
Have we done that episode yet?
We have a very special attachment to our fat suits on this show.
And to get this character who then gets this relationship that's complicated, and actually then Dan, your friend,
Irene?
Irene.
Oh, Irene. Yeah,
Irene and I went to school together.
Yeah. Who's I forgot her character's name.
Carol.
Carol. like weird back and forth with them and you, and just like I love Superstore. I initially had a hard time watching it because I worked at Target for summer in high school.
Right.
But then it was just so cathartic to really just dive into it. And like, spoilers for Superstore, your wedding and the ukulele duet.
I was singing Creep.
Yeah. It's just such a bizarre and beautiful and also, like wonderful.
I created those harmonies myself on the spot.
Did you? What?
I was like, oh, I'm going to sing harmony on this. I'm not going to sing.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Also, Jerry and Sandra and Carol are all very sexual. You know?
Yes. Which you often don't see with femme characters.
Right. Yeah. They talk about like how much sex they're having. And we had sex essentially like on screen in the manager's office.
Yes.
So yeah. And I think there's an episode where we're in a tent inside. There's a blizzard. We all have to stay inside the store, and there are sounds of, I think, me and Carol having sex. So
I love knowing now that was written for you, because Jerry's such a fun, strange character.
The benefit of network television, that because it's being written and produced while it's being aired, they can evolve it as it goes. So like the direction at the end of the season can be different than at the beginning.
Yeah.
And they can respond to a fan base.
They can respond to a fan base, which could be a good or bad.
Right, exactly.
But so I've been on shows where I love this show. I was on Pen 15. It's a great show.
Oh yeah.
The creators are so good, so funny. And I had a good scene, and they, I think very generously at the end of the episode, at the end of shooting, they said, "Oh, you did such a great job. We're going to try to bring you in more later this season." And in my head, I was like, "You can't. Like, you're block shooting, so meaning they're shooting parts of different episodes all at once. You've already scripted all 8 episodes. You've already mapped out all of to save money. You're being super efficient about. You can't change your scripts.
You can't. It's locked.
Whereas something like Superstore, they're a couple of episodes ahead, but they don't necessarily, the episodes, like the last 5 scripts are not locked in any way.
Well, also when you have that many episodes, because it's network, not every episode needs to get the arc done of the season.
Yeah.
And so you have some breathing room, and you can be like, yeah, we're going to walk over here for a little while.
Yeah, it's I don't even know if it exists anymore, a 22 episode season.
It's rare.
A lot of shows now are like
even network is scaling back.
Yeah. I think Abbott might be, I don't know.
Yeah.
We just watched English Teacher, and it was 8 episodes.
Like, exactly. Okay. Yeah. Well, I want to kind of roll back to your show on Dropout. One of the things that got me fascinated was, first of all, just the whole idea, right? That you're going to play Scarlett Johansson because Scarlett Johansson, she plays Asian characters. Why not?
Yeah.
So
that's essentially the whole pitch.
That's the conceit, right? That's the conceit, right? That's the conceit, which I love. What I was really interested in is I watched for lack of a better word, the supplemental material, which is the video that's like a 10-minute video.
The behind the scenes kind of thing.
I guess so, yeah.
Even though it's behind the scenes, but they released it before the special came out.
Well, and it's weird because it is temporally from all points of view, because I can't tell what was done before, what was done after, and then anyway. But my question is, somewhere in there they allude to the fact that in the evolution of the piece, it started out much meaner.
Yes.
And we just saw another one-person show.
Sugar Daddy?
Sugar Daddy.
Sugar Daddy, yeah. I saw Sam's show 2 weeks ago.
It was Sam Morrison, which is another brilliant show. And he also talks about the development initially starting off like, this is a little too mean, and then it needs to come back.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could talk a little bit, not necessarily about that specifically, unless you want to, but sort of the evolution of writing it, and like where it came from, because it's still evolving from what I understand.
It still evolves some. I mean, there's parts of it that still change depending on each performance.
Sure.
But so in terms of the writing, the way it was put together, it changed because I was doing readings at a place called Skiptown Playhouse over on my side of town in East Hollywood, where I would just rent this theater. It only seats like 30 people. I literally would only invite like 10 people, and I would do a reading of the show. This was like January 2023. And then the first time I did it, my friends thought it was too mean.
Oh boy.
So, and then it's just the process of
like mean to Miss Johansson.
Yes. And so it's a process of doing more readings like that. And then I did it in Austin at the Fusebox Festival. I did it in Hollywood Fringe, and then I did it in Scotland. So every time I was doing this live performance, where most of those were reading from a music stand with the script on it, I was rewriting it every time. So it was a lot of finding essentially whatever you would say my message is behind the show is like vegetables. And essentially I was like Jessica Seinfeld, where a cookbook of like, let's hide your vegetables inside a chocolate muffin. And the muffin is comedy,
Yeah.
So I was just adding more and more chocolate muffin to the show to sort of make the message part of it palatable. But there is an interesting other arc to it, which I don't know if I fully reckoned with this, but I think part of the development was also, I don't know if I think it was too mean at the beginning, but there is an element of this show that is, I have to be aware of saying these things to a majority white audience. And so I have to say it in a way that they don't bristle from the beginning. And so while I do think some of the feedback at my first couple readings was valid in terms of it, maybe, it might even be so much as like, this is mean, so it's not interesting. That's a valid thing. But I think there was a little bit also of bristling in a way of like, I don't.
You sound so angry, Chris.
Yeah, exactly.
As an Asian adjacent guy who worked in Hollywood through the nils and the teens, I feel like I heard this very differently than maybe a lot of the white people.
It's been received very differently by different audiences.
Well, I was actually going to ask about that, but I don't want to derail.
No, definitely. I just say that specifically Asian actors or theater performers or kids in drama school have received this show so much more intensely than anybody else.
I wonder why.
Yeah. I mean, it's right up.
Yeah. Well, the fight against yellowface has been a really real thing in Hollywood and been completely ignored by the most part until fairly recently.
Very recently.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of times with Asian issues, they're just, people just don't care about it as much.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that is a thing, right? And then sometimes I think, in the grand power structure of America, there is a part of me that does think, maybe these things aren't as big a deal as racism and how mortgage payments are given out to black people. I don't know if Scarlett Johansson doing Ghost in the Shell is maybe not the same thing as like incarceration rates or like child poverty or
but it's symptomatic of
it's symptomatic. And so I always ride this line between advocating for my own issues and then also recognizing that we live in this power dynamic where being real about people have limited resources to think about this stuff. And so people naturally end up prioritizing things. That's kind of why in the show, I kind of just say like, you're probably not going to remember this. Because that's been my experience in general, is that you can kind of raise a stink about things and then 6 months later we're sort of on to something else.
I wanted to talk about that actually, because I watched it a month or two ago and then I re-listened to it like on the way back down while I was driving here. And towards the end of the show, you asked the question, does this work?
Yeah.
And it was
that was really new for that recording, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had to like pause and like dictate my thoughts while I was driving because that struck me and kind of related to what you just said, which from my point of view, from my experience, I think it really does. And I think the reason it does is that when we're like we were just talking about this before the show started, like the pop culture segments that we just did that are like really depressing and like kind of horrible to confront. And like there's so many issues that any given person can come across at any given moment, whether it's on social media or news or in a performance or whatever. And I think doing this in the form of art, in the form of performance, in the form of entertaining people gives them an experience that's indelible, that like the experience of watching that is what they will take, whether or not they remember the details of it.
Right.
They'll take the experience of having sat and laughed and cried and been there with you, whether it's on Dropout or in person. And I think that, like in that sense, it really does work in a way that maybe it's harder to get that message through in other mediums.
I really like that because when we talk about, for example, fat liberation, the stuff that we're dealing with now, it's like, this is not a new issue. This is not a new argument. This is not a new outrage. This was happening in, 1963 at the Fat Inn, these issues go way back and it can give you this sense of like, oh, why are we bothering? It never changes. But I do think what you say, Michael, is so important. And the example that strikes me is Will and Grace. Not that it's the greatest show on earth, not that it was the pinnacle of gay liberation, but just that it is a moment in time that will not be forgotten.
Yeah.
And
you're talking about the reboot. only.
No, I forgot the reboot.
Oh my God, that was
the biggest moment was the Murphy Brown reboot. But
it's this idea that art we can look at that and it is a marker.
Yeah,
I mostly agree with you. And I think that I don't know, maybe you can relate from the marginalization of fat people, but like, I think most people of color in America will carry a little bit of cynicism about whether or not, because when you say it's indelible, my thought was like, some of these seem pretty delible. And I think it is a sort of push forward, and then we might fall back a little bit. It is
but you can go back and look at it, which is not true if you have a protest in a park.
Something like Will and Grace did become a bit of a touchstone in terms of, I know a guy like Will or whatever, you know, like they can become sort of.
I feel like it's
points.
less of a touchstone for the minority group being represented,
yes,
more of a touchstone for the mainstream group.
Well, but that's what I'm saying.
Person.
I'm not talking about the quality. I'm talking about the importance.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. But that is why I was sort of framing it as being like, these are still sort of things we're offering up to the majority.
Absolutely.
To be. And so that's just an interesting dynamic that you have to.
Well, and that's why you need to hide your vegetables in the chocolate muffin, because there's so much in activist spaces. I will talk about the need for you need after school special level stuff for most audiences, because people will be like, wow, fat people get treated badly.
Yeah.
And I never really thought about there's a person underneath all that fat.
Well, in a way, it just ends up sort of being like marketing, in that you have to hit somebody from so many different angles.
Yeah.
But to your point about whether it works or not, that moment in the special, I think that moment for me was important because in the film special, that's the newest part of the show, and that is the most raw part of the entire show. Because the anecdote that I described in that moment had happened to me 48 hours before the taping. And so I was confronted with this world where this show that I created about racism or whatever is doing really well. We're about to film it for Dropout, one of my favorite services. I'm working with all these people I love. And at the same time, someone that is still a friend of mine,
and hardcore supporter of your art.
Who supported this specific show for months at the rate of $30,000 a month. No. Then seemed to fully misunderstand the point of the show, to the point that I was just so disheartened by it.
Well, I mean, I think it's what you said. It's they just forgot. Oops. I did. Oh, I did say that then, didn't I? It's this amnesia.
In fact, in Scotland, we premiered this Dropout special for a live group of Dropout fans as a special show. Sam Reich was there. We did a Q&A. It was super fun. And that person that I talked about was in Scotland. And I was worried that they were going to come to this viewing and hear this anecdote. And then in my mind, I thought, I bet if they hear this, they're going to think it's about somebody else.
Yep. Yeah. Of course they will.
Oh my.
They're not even going to remember that.
I think that's extremely astute. Yes.
Yeah.
Something that I thought of when I rewatched the show, because I had this experience during Sugar Daddy as well, of both shows are just there's so many points that are so funny, but then also I feel car crash jump scare of just very impactful emotional things. And then I'm having these highs and lows.
Yeah.
And points where the audience is laughing, but I'm it's such a hard emotional moment. And when I saw Sugar Daddy the first time, because we saw it twice, there was a point where I was I need to manage where I'm at, because I might just be sobbing because I'm laughing, crying, but then also and then we have a really emotional beat where I'm crying, but then there's a point, I don't think I told you this, I was I am going to have a complete breakdown, and I feel I'm in a central enough point in the theater where it will be a thing. I
don't want to pull focus from Sam.
So I want to know what that's like for you as a performer, having these hitting these comedic beats, but then also emotional beats, but people are laughing and what is that
it's been discussed a lot in terms of, should we be laughing at this part? It's Sam and I share a lot of commonalities. I love Sam Morrison. We met in Scotland and we both did a stand-up show where I went before him in the stand-up set. And in the stand-up set, I talked about that a partner of mine had died, that I was gay, I loved bears and fat guys, and I think in that set I had poppers on me, and and that I had diabetes. And then after the show, he was like, "Are you me?" But Sugar Daddy's so good. I think that Sam, I'll speak for Sam.
Well, he's not here. Go ahead.
Well, because I bet he would think this is true, that I think as comedians, we both have, and maybe this is a adaptive behavior where if we go through something traumatic, we're kind of immediately like, ooh, what if I shared this with an audience? And it almost becomes probably on some artistic level, like an excitement about being sort of emotionally provocative about things that happened to you. And also keep in mind that I'm sure he's done that show hundreds of times, and I've done Scarlett hundreds of times in my new show as well. And so we have a little bit more of emotional distance from it, and you're experiencing it right then.
Yeah.
You know? And then it becomes part of the job of the comedian or the actor to be able to become present again with that thing. And I don't know, for Scarlett, I found it quite easy to just sit in those moments. Like after there's this whole like climactic like breakdown thing, and the whole chunk after that is kind of the easiest part of the show for me. Because all it is I'm just talking to people in the audience saying exactly what I think. And I don't know why, but the ability to just talk to 500 people in an extremely raw emotional state is something that like comes easily to me. So which is handy for an actor. I guess.
And it shows because you do have this wonderful comfortability with it, which is so, I think it's what allows the show to succeed and us to get it.
Yeah. And so from my perspective, I don't find those intimidating or overwhelming in terms of emotion. I think maybe there's probably something healing about being able to walk through those emotions again and again and come out the other side. But I do recognize that I bet Sam has experienced this too. We're both sort of touching on things that an audience member who has not had the benefit of doing readings of it for 9 months might be experiencing it in a more directly traumatic way.
Yeah. No,
I mean, because I'm not on book in that moment.
Kind of apropos of that technique and having rehearsed it and written it, was really interested in your talk in the show about being at North Carolina School of the Arts. I have a theater background. I went to graduate school for directing. And
where'd you go?
UT Austin.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So, and it reminded me of something that Viola Davis talks about going to Juilliard, which is, it is so engineered to make you a white actor with a white repertoire.
Yeah.
And she fought very hard against it and managed to kind of carve her own path. And you have the anecdotes that you tell about it in the show.
Yeah. I definitely felt that. At the same time, I kind of think that Asian people don't really have, well, first of all, because Asian people sort of seen culturally as a monolith, right? But we don't really have a separate cultural identity from the default white American one, whereas I'd probably argue that Latinos or there's a black cultural tradition that can be drawn upon, right? But in an Asian American cultural tradition, it's kind of like, I actually have experienced it more now that I live in Los Angeles.
I was going to say Westminster, Koreatown.
Well, because I'm sort of like, there kind of is one whenever I go get boba, you know? But I think it's harder to think about if I was in theater school trying to be an Asian American actor. I don't know what that would look like. And so that's not to excuse the school for having whatever it's sort of like subliminal racism.
Right. Well, because Viola Davis talks about, she engineered a program for herself at Juilliard of like going to Africa and studying dance and studying culture. And I also wanted to talk about it in terms of, I've talked to so many fat actors who talk about getting like, well, you're never going to play Hamlet. Why not? Well, you're fat.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff is crazy. Well, so I'm reflexively anti anytime somebody says that this actor's too old, this actor doesn't look right for this part. I'm always just reflexively like, that's a stupid reason. I don't believe this at all. I saw Simon Russell Beale do Hamlet at the Brooklyn Academy of Art. Brooklyn Academy of Music, BAM. I saw him do Hamlet when he was, I think, 41. He's a chubby guy. And it was just like, I'm good enough. I want to do this. You know what I mean? The main thing I would say about all that kind of stuff is that, say we talk about an actor being like presidential to play a president on something. I would argue before the TV show 24, if you were black, you were not considered presidential, or before Morgan Freeman in
White House down or whatever it's
Deep
called.
Impact.
Deep Impact.
Impact.
Right? You were not considered presidential if you were not white.
This almost feels like I don't want this to be like a gotcha question.
Yeah.
But so like, how do you feel? Because you're an actor in the industry. Fat suits. Like, what is?
Oh, how is that going to be a gotcha question?
Well, I don't know because I feel
If
like
I
it's
was like,
such
I
a
love 'em.
Well, no, just because it's like I feel like there's always like the like, oh well, like sometimes the story just calls for it, and like, I mean, we didn't really go into this because
Oh my God.
it's after Halloween,
Fat suits
but
are
like,
the dumb. They are stupid on so many levels. One, if you've seen The Penguin,
Yeah.
Colin Farrell puts on all this makeup and whatever, and they just make him look like a guy from like the fourth actor from The Sopranos.
Yeah.
And so
You could have saved a lot of money there.
Right. I know. So the main reason they would argue that they put famous people into these roles is that they can send Colin Farrell on a press junket.
Yes.
And then do all this marketing for the Penguin. I would argue that in the last 6 months, how many times did you ever see Colin Farrell doing an interview about the Penguin? I mean, think.
There was an interview of him talking about how much he hated putting on the makeup.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
he was
About
saying-
what a horrible experience it was.
Yeah.
So I think it's some on that level. I think The Whale is so horrible.
Yeah.
I'm sure you agree.
Yeah. That was actually like very early on. We're about to have our 200th episode of the podcast. And one of the very early episodes was like when they announced they were making it.
Yeah.
And we talked about it then. And
And then we refused to give it any
just 'cause
lip
it's like,
service afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I just think it's dumb. Also, well, first of all, okay, so then on another level, I'm always like, oh, we could have had a hot actor be in this role.
Yeah.
Like, let's say we discovered so in the world of celebrity actors, okay, there isn't an actor that is the size of the character in The Whale. So, but there are actors out there that are the size of the character in The Whale. So go cast one. It's not like that movie was going to be some Avengers level hit.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right. We need a man who can fly.
Yeah.
no, and I think it's Darlene Cates, who was the actress in What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Oh, yeah.
Like they went out and found her and they made it work. And
she was great.
And
She
they
was
like
amazing.
adapted things. You know, the whole thing is like, oh, well, you can't have someone that large doing any kind of physicality in a movie role. And there was like something where she had a physical limitation where they adapted, like, I think it's when she's like going the stairs, like she had trouble with stairs and like, oh, okay, we just had her like do the steps twice and then just like looped it.
Yeah. Just,
But also, there's people that size in the world that exist doing like jobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
They're
know,
just like
so-
in the world, like it's like just, I don't know, go to the Midwest.
Well, that's why I'll just say a quick little thing about how much I hate The Whale and I hate the guy who wrote it.
Yeah.
Please.
That's my biggest problem with The Whale is that the script exists.
Well, because the guy I think he was like a Mormon fat gay guy. And there was an interview I read. First of all, I read the script when it was a play. I think it was off Broadway. I don't think it was Broadway.
Chicago, started in Chicago.
And I read the script then and I was like, this script is really kind of toxic. And then there was an interview with him where he said, I wanted to start with this image of a character that you'd be repulsed by and that there's no way the audience could relate to this character. And by the end, I wanted them to relate to this character. And then the trailer for the movie came out and I thought, oh, so this is a movie about what if a guy looked so repulsive and then you found out he was a human being?
Yeah.
What a great premise for
yeah.
you. Wait, what are you talking about? You're starting with this premise that he's not worth being a person. That's a specious premise for your movie to begin with.
And yet universally accepted about many fat people.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, my summary, I love fat suits. Let's put it
On record.
Also, I think they always look bad.
Yes.
Maybe I would feel differently if they were imperceptible. And also, I always feel like they don't look like the way real fat people look. And then I also think, Colin Farrell, why don't you just fucking gain the weight? Gain the weight for the role.
Yeah.
And then I can watch The Penguin and be like, ooh, Colin Farrell's hot in this show. You know?
No, I have to say I hate that I actually like loved the Penguin in the Batman because it was like it was such a comical thing to me
In the movie.
in the movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, I hate that I actually like love this, and this is like my favorite part of the movie. It's him just being, like, the Gabagool one, like, oh my god, you guys are idiots! You don't get it. It's La Rato or whatever. The thing, like he's like, you guys are supposed to be the greatest detectives, and like I just figured it out.
Well, I will say also that I think sometimes actors have a skewed version of themselves in the sense that I bet if Colin Farrell just kind of let himself go a little bit in terms of like because his hair is kind of strange as the penguin, right? And then gained a little bit of weight and then put on some penguin-like clothes. I think we would have bought him as the penguin and he could have done everything that you loved about the character.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas I think in their minds, they're like, obviously I've got to put on all these prosthetics to look like somebody like this insane character.
Well, so we saw at the Pasadena Playhouse, Cyrano de Bergerac.
I'll just say that I was in Scotland when this happened and I was offered a role in that show and I couldn't do it.
Oh, really?
Because I was in Scotland and I really wanted to.
So that was an interesting show. We didn't care for it for a number of reasons.
It would have been way better if I was in it.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
That's why we walked out.
No, but so he did not have a nose.
There was
no prosthetic nose.
And traditionally in Cyrano, there's the prosthetic nose, except in modern theater where it's like, no, the nose is implied.
Yes.
This is like Violet, the musical, where she has a disfigured face, but she doesn't actually have one. Except when I saw it on Off-Broadway, I was sitting so far back, I was like, I guess she's disfigured. And then at the end, they were like, no, it was metaphorical. I was like, oh, I thought she was.
Well, the first time they did that is the Elephant Man on stage. They didn't make him act in a suit. He implied it through his physicality.
Yeah. And I read reviews because I'm like, it bothered me so much because like everything I knew about the show is like the nose. There's so many jokes about the nose. And they were talking about it's implied, it's a metaphor, it's whatever. And I was saying to Dan, I'm like, would they do the whale play without a fat suit? And it's just like someone who's like just like the fat suit's implied. And like people would be furious. People would be like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't get it.
Well, also the weird thing about that is then they couldn't do the whale. Let's say we do the metaphorical whale. I don't think they would cast me in it. Right? They'd cast a very fit.
They cast Colin Farrell.
Yeah. They would do like a Shallow Hal type thing where they're like, he's actually beautiful inside. So it's a very handsome,
Timothy
athletic.
Chalamet.
You know what I mean? So they'd never just put like they wouldn't do implied whale with David Harbour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No. Yeah.
Because it's not enough of the metaphor for them.
No, you got to cast someone hot because of what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I also think too that will never happen. Because, as you say in the script, the whole point of the script is that the character is disgusting. And how can you do that if they're not fat?
Yeah. So in the Cyrano, he had like an extended part where he was because he makes fun of his own nose, right? That whole part, he was just a normal looking guy.
Yes. And again, having been around theater long, I'm used to not seeing a prosthetic nose in Cyrano because it's implied. It's very hard.
Oh, so you've seen this approach before?
Oh yeah, that's nothing. No, it is again Elephant Man approach. It's this idea that you're going to imagine the nose.
What if everyone else had prosthetic noses?
Well, actually, Trevor came up with that.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I guess maybe the
Twilight Zone version.
The beautiful actor. Everyone else is fat.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say if I had been able to do the role in Cyrano, I'm sure day one I would be like, he's got to have a nose. And I would have stopped this whole thing. I would be like, I'm not going to be in this 4-line role in this production.
There were no 4-line roles in that production. I'll tell you that.
I think I was up for a stage manager type character.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I get it. We've seen that shorthand a lot. Guy Branam had this great joke when the first season of This Is Us came out. He said, I can't wait for season 2 of This Is Us when Chrissy Metz loses enough weight to have a character.
I'm in episodes 1 and 8 of season 1 of This Is Us. And literally when we were shooting it, they were talking about the fact that there was some obligation on her part to lose weight for the storyline, but then it sort of got obscured. And then I think it was kind of like, oh, no, we never had that agreement or not. But I think they did.
Oh, it did. I think I heard people talking about that.
Yeah.
And if the two of us
also Chris Sullivan, is that his name?
I think so.
Was wearing a fat suit in that show.
Yeah, because I think he lost weight at some point. Like I think he had maybe
he started with a fat suit.
Really?
Yeah,
I thought it was that he like he just ended up losing some weight, and they're like, oh well, for continuity, we'll just like.
Well, it's funny because first of all, he's very hot, and I think he started with a fat suit, and I think also it was kind of like, you don't look that thin anymore. like for TV standards, you could just be like people think Kate Winslet is fat, you know,
right,
or
exactly.
David. I mean, David Harbour, I don't think is actually that large.
Well, going back to something you said earlier about, or I think Trevor was talking about you couldn't possibly cast someone that fat. In our very first podcast episode, we talk about David Harbour's story about being denied the chance to play the Blob in the Marvel movie because they were so afraid that he was so fat he would drop dead of a heart attack on the set.
Too fat to play the Blob.
He was too fat to play the Blob.
And is there a photo of him at the time? Because if you think back to when Chris Farley did that Chippendales thing on SNL, and people were like, "Oh my god, can't believe how fat! Like this is insane." If you watch that video now, it's not extreme at all.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So in Superstore, we talked about your sex scene with Sandra.
Yeah.
Your character in Superstore was very normal, right? He was kind of a normal guy. So was Sandra. Now, what we see in a lot of shows that have fat characters, they get accused of normalizing fatness. How dare you normalize fatness? You're going to destroy civilization.
Well, that's why we show them eating constantly. Because otherwise, that's how we show their monsters.
There's a character in, I think in Aladdin, the stage musical, that I hate so much because every time he shows up, he's like,
"Got a ham sandwich?"
Yeah. He's like, "Did someone say hummus or whatever?"
Well, I'm curious though. Superstore, I thought their characters were so normal. Did you ever get accused of those
normalizing fatness?
Of normalizing fatness, of being shocking,
glorifying obesity?
No, I don't think so. But I wonder if that folds into a larger, like, condescending view of people in the Midwest that work at big box stores. That it's kind of like, that's how they all are. I don't know. No, I never did.
I'm glad for that. I'm genuinely glad for that.
I mean, as someone from the Midwest who worked in the big box store, it was like this. I think that's why I loved it so much, because it's like, oh my god, this is like, it's people. It's just like human beings.
I would say a thing that is maybe hyper real or not super realistic about that store is that we were working in a St. Louis, or they were working in a St. Louis big box store. And there is so much Asian diversity in that. That was like, I don't know. That's where I was like, it's fine with me. When Superstore was on, it had the most regular and recurring Asian characters on it of any show on television, and none of us were related to each other. Because it was like me, Sandra, Cheyenne, this guy Brett was in it. The Brett, like
Mateo.
But then also people's families would come in and stuff like that. Like but between Mateo, Cheyenne, Sandra, me, and because they did build storylines around Brett. I think Brett the one where like
he gets deported later on.
Somebody's hand got disappeared and ended up in a wall or something. Like
that's right.
They added all these fun side stories for all of the background actors, basically. But I remember one time just sort of looking on set, I was like, this is more. Like, we had more Asian characters on screen than fresh off the boat, at one point.
Oh my God, you're right. Like, legit.
That's probably true.
Wow.
Well, you had a big box store to fill.
That's right.
That's one of the things I really loved about that show, though. It felt like a slice of Los Angeles, even though it wasn't.
Are you talking about Superstore?
Superstore.
Well, also for a while, you could drive over the hill and see the front of it.
That's right.
I really enjoyed that.
When
that was always fun.
Anytime I would go to Michael's, I would always pass the Superstore and be like, it's Cloud 9.
And now it's all gone for some Universal Studios backlots.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised in 3 years if they do a Superstore reboot. Not because I know anything, just because on some levels I feel like sometimes ideas are so bankrupt that they're just like, let's do that again.
When I feel like
we found some story ideas on the couch.
Yeah.
Do you have like a promo code you can give people, like where you get a little kickback from Dropout?
I don't. If you go to dropout.tv and you do the 3-day trial and you click on my special first, I will get a little kickback, and then I have to give 10% of that back to Trevor. Pay back the money that
up to a maximum of $30,000.
It would be in your best interest.
But also, I think a lot of people. I like to put people on the idea of Dropout in general, because a lot of people still don't know about it, and it's a great service.
Dropout is
Michael is
I'm a big Dropout fan. In fact, I was going to save this for because it's not necessarily relevant to the show, but spoiler alert for Chris's special, if you don't want to hear about this, tune like 1 minute into the future or something. But so the bit where it goes,
the sort of nightmare
is super meta,
especially
meta, which seems unique to the Dropout special, if I'm not mistaken. The fact that you were able to incorporate your appearances on real Dropout shows into the narrative, but also into a way, because I saw that Make Some Noise episode. before the special, and then I was like, wait, but that's them. That's actually what's happened.
Yeah, we're wearing the same clothes. They're wearing the same clothes as that episode.
It was all the same. And I just, that extra level of attention, or like sitting down on very important people.
Yes.
And Vic's first question is always, so who are you?
Right.
And it just made sense for your show, but also fit in the world of Dropout. And I just, as a fan, really appreciate it.
Thank you. First of all, during that sequence, how many orgasms did you have?
About between 5 and 7, but I listened to it twice. So.
If you go to my YouTube channel, actually, I have video footage of when we showed it in Scotland to a group of 80 Dropout fans.
Oh, wow.
That
I bet they lost their mind.
Yeah, it's really fun to see them experience that sequence because even still, you can only see my special by being a subscriber to Dropout. So it was very much as if I was doing a performance of the show at a very specific theater with this very specific audience. So
almost like live theater.
Yeah. So I wanted it to be very specific to them. And also, I think even if you're not a big Dropout person, I framed the entire special as being, it's really just for you at home sitting on the couch watching it. The live audience in the show is functional to create the experience of it being a show, but the special is aimed at the person at home watching it. Because I didn't want to just do a special that was, okay, we turn on the cameras and now you're going to watch other people watch something.
Right.
This is really just like the audience in the theater is sort of ancillary to you at home, your experience.
Would you say they're part of your set?
Yeah.
It says that in the show.
Yeah. And so, but I think that if you are a Dropout head, that there's like bonus experiences to it as well.
It's all the Easter eggs.
Well, and even at the end with the whole like faux interview with Grant.
With Grant and Sam,
which was while the countdown timer for the next Dropout show was like playing in the background, and then you hear like Grant talking. He loves playing the heel. He's so good at it.
I also love that so that moment in the live show is slightly different. So obviously there's no Sam and Grant don't come to the live show anymore. But what I do love about the TV presentation of it is visually in the last moments of the show, their image basically like pushes me off the screen.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And I like metaphorically, I think that's so satisfying. even if it's kind of frustrating to watch in a way, but it's just so I think I had pitched that Zoom to Jonah Ray, who directed it, and when the editor Paul Bonanno put it in, and like the image of them just growing, just like
eclipsing you,
and it goes in a real technical level. It happens when there's a zoom as well. The camera's zooming, and so you almost don't quite get a sense of what's happening yet until they've like fully pushed me off.
It's very
it's effective. Yeah, I agree. So effective.
I will say the cameo on Very Important People was completely Sam Reich's idea. So we had finished. Sam and I were playing Blood on the Clock Tower. So in Blood on the Clock Tower, it's like Werewolf or Mafia, where you're trying to figure out who's evil, and you go and have these little side chats to try to figure out who's lying or not. And in our side chat, we just talked about the special. And he was like, hey, VIP's filming next week. I think this idea of because VIP is basically all about what your identity is. He said, I think this would be a great last thing for us to film. And that was the last thing we shot for the show. And I was just like, I think that's a great idea, but I've been asking favors from so many people on the sets for 6 months now. That is it going to be too imposing for us to also drop in on that show as well? Because I did think it was a great idea. And Sam was kind of like, well, I kind of know a guy that can help you. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot you're the CEO.
He's in charge over there.
Yeah.
No, that was a really, as a Dropout fan, I thought that was just like chef's kiss.
I will also say just a shout out to Sam and Dropout and David Kearns, who's the executive producer. And I'm kind of ashamed that I didn't know this. Everybody that was a cameo in that got a full day rate.
Oh, nice.
For their appearances, which I guess makes sense. But coming from the world of comedy and shooting sketches and stuff like that, I honestly thought we were just like, hey, can you guys just stay for 15 more minutes and we'll just shoot this quick little thing? But they all got a full day of pay from it, which is a very Dropout thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's embarrassing because I never thought of that. I was like, oh yeah, I guess they should be paid.
Well, it is your show, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to save money, so.
Give us your little rundown of where people can find you. It sounds like YouTube. I know you're on Instagram. Do you do the TikTok?
I do. I'm on TikTok at Chris Grace Comedy, and I'm on Instagram at Chris Grace Comedy.
Yeah.
I'll be doing a show at the Elysian Theater on November 24th. This is my new solo show.
That's in Los Angeles.
This is Sardines, yes. Which I still haven't gotten a check from Trevor for this show. But yeah, which is I'm just as proud of it over Scarlett, and like I took to Scotland this year, and I think I'm really proud of this show. And it was kind of thinking because like Scarlett went so well.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine being like, I'm going to do a solo performance for the first time, and then 16 months from now, it's going to be filmed as a special and come out. That's kind of.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah, like I would not have guessed that would happen.
No one would.
So the unfortunate side effect is then it creates in your head like, I got to do another one. Like, what's going to happen for the next one? And so this one I was really worried about being as good, but I'm really happy with it.
And the title is Sardines?
Yeah, what's
Chris Grace
I'm
Sardines.
just curious, what's it about?
This is a show. It's a comedy about death, and it's basically me walking you through how in a like 6-year period, 5 people in my life died. So my sister, brother, mother, father, and my partner.
Wow.
And so if you love Sugar Daddy, because it's funny because this is kind of the stuff I was talking about in stand-up when I met Sam.
Right.
And so we were like, we have a lot of commonalities. And we saw Sugar Daddy at the Wallace here.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so good. And also, I was very grateful that I had not seen Sugar Daddy before I created Sardines. Because there are some similarities. It's a pretty different show, but there were a couple of moments I was like, ooh, like they feel cousins to each other.
Well, death and grief have some commonalities.
Yeah. So I'll put Trevor right in the middle of the audience where you can't move.
And the show gets shut down because I am just like
I'm going
losing
to arrange a spotlight just to go on you right in the middle.
It's funny because I'm not very emotional. And I feel like both of those shows
got him. Got him.
My first watching Scarlett Johansson, I was prepared for the second time. And actually, when I saw Sugar Daddy the second time too, I was like able to reel it in a little.
Well, do you think that it's because how often do you see shows that talk about like Sugar Daddy? How often do you see a show that talks about anything in Sugar Daddy?
Yeah.
So is there a newness to?
I think a newness, and I think also just a rawness in like seeing myself and seeing the people close to me in represented in a way that I normally don't. Because normally it's like if there's a fat person, it's like, well, a fat person's fat and they gotta lose weight, and then they can become a person. And that's the first time I've seen that kind of in theater, really. And before that, it was like Shrill.
Oh yeah. Well, I think what you're describing is you feel such closeness to the character because of their identity. And then there's such an intimacy with what they reveal.
Yes.
Yeah. It's an underestimated thing about representation where, like the first time I saw Longtime Companion, which I think is a very good movie, but in that era, there's like Longtime Companion and like Broken Hearts Club, the one with
Dean Cain.
Dean Cain. I think Billy Porter's in it, right?
Yeah.
But there were movies back then that were, I think if you watch them now, I don't know if they would hold up. I don't know if Jeffrey holds up these days or not. But the force of the representation was like, oh my God, like I've never seen this before. But sort of to your Will and Grace point.
Well, that's me. Yeah, exactly. That the quality is not as important as the importance, but the representation. It's there.
And then something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think does have the quality, but also has the representation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that for me is like the greatest movie I've ever seen.
When I used to talk about the importance of representation of race, like I would always discuss with people the first time I saw someone of my own race on TV. And I can remember that.
When was that?
It was Necessary Roughness. It was a Samoan dude who plays basically he ends up with Kathy Ireland at the end of the movie.
Oh wow.
And it was a big deal for me because it was the first time I saw my own face on TV.
Right.
The first time. And a lot of people can't understand what that is because it was ubiquitous for them.
Right.
How could you remember the first time you saw a white person on TV?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, the representation means something.
Yeah, for sure.
Did it matter to you? Because what strikes me also about that is that he ends up with Kathy Ireland at the end of the movie. Did that? And the reason I say this because there's it's one thing to have an actor of color in a major role. It's quite another to have them end up with the white girl.
It was still a bit role. And it was supposed to be, I think it was supposed to be funny that he ends up with Kathy Ireland.
I guess my question though was about whether it meant that had an impact or that was just That was superfluous.
No, I mean, I have to pick and choose pieces of my representation. It's like same thing, Longtime Companion.
Yeah.
Was the first time I saw a gay man represented seriously on a screen, right? I get that importance.
And Alex Karras and Victor Victoria.
Yeah.
So kind of the inverse of Don's point about like seeing yourself represented for the first time. And I mean, I'm white, so that hasn't been a thing, but I do kind of remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, in Crazy Rich Asians, there are no white people, right? They're like,
there's one white dude. I think he plays a waiter.
Oh, is there a
interesting.
white?
That's not how the movie started out. I mean, in development, because they were very concerned that the woman
They wanted a white protagonist.
They wanted a white girl because they were like, well, how will people get into this world? We'll have no way in if there's not a white character.
But the way that the movie is now.
I don't. Maybe not. Yeah.
I just remember this growing feeling of excitement as I was watching the movie. I was like,
you're going to be so disappointed if a white main
I
character
was,
showed up.
I really was. I was like, wait, did they do it? Did they pull it off?
Right,
did this actually happen? And then you get to the end of the movie, and I don't think there is. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right at the end, a white guy goes,
just like pops
I'm the
up,
protagonist.
Surprise!
And everybody goes, oh, thank God.
Like literally grabs the camera.
Then a bunch of white people are like, oh, now I like it.
What was the movie?
It's a big deal for me. Like when I first moved to Hollywood, racism towards Asian people was still very, very common. The first script I wrote in a Asian American police captain. And this is for a producer who's dead now, so I'm allowed to say this. Like, it was for a Mike Hammer reboot.
Oh, wow.
And I was told point blank, and he saw my face. It was in a meeting face to face where he's looking at this face and he tells me, well, we can't do, no one wants to see the busboy as the protagonist.
Oh, God.
You know, it was legit. Like, if he's not working in a restaurant, we don't have room for an Asian character in the script, you know? So I'm so glad we live in a different world now. You know, it's like 20 years later, it's better now. So, Chris, next episode is our 200th episode.
Whoa.
200 episodes, everyone. We've been together for a little while.
And those are just the official episodes.
Yeah,
We've done a fuck ton more than that.
260 plus the miniseries.
And so we're not doing a bit next episode because it's our special episode. So this episode, we're doing an ode to our 200th episode because I am celebrating by exploring some of the longest, most wonderful things that we have.
So the lore for the bit that we do at the end of every episode is that Trevor always gets it right, and we always guess something different, and then he ends up showing
is this
us up
true?
every time.
Yeah, pretty much.
That happens.
So
a lot.
if he ever does guess first,
Okay,
it
so
is
your
in
guess
your
was
best
Tales of
interest to follow.
And being married to him, I know that the best policy is do what the fat man says.
For over 100 years, Broadway has served as the heart of America's theater world, giving birth to the genre of some of America's most enduring shows, the American Broadway musical extravaganza. Which of the following has the longest run on Broadway? 1, The Lion King. 2, Cats. 3, Phantom of the Opera. Or 4, A Chorus Line.
So Dan has to answer last.
Well, the thing is, I know what the answer used to be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it used to be Chorus Line.
It used to be Chorus Line.
My guess is Cats.
I think it's Cats.
I
Unless you're
shoot for
talking.
Cats.
Unless you're talking.
Is it continuous run?
Yeah, it's got to be
Continuous run.
continuous run.
Oh,
I think Phantom then. Because didn't it just end?
It just
Recently?
ended like 2 years
a
ago,
couple
maybe.
years ago.
Well, are you?
I think it ended 4 years ago, but COVID throws us crazy.
I'm
You're
gonna
talking
go-
Broadway performances, though, not like all
Broadway
over the world.
performance is not all over the world.
I'm going to go Lion King. Ooh. Because and if it's not Lion King now, I think Lion King will be it pretty soon.
that's a fair point.
reasonable.
Okay. The answer is, in fact, still The Phantom of the Opera.
Is it?
Oh,
Really?
see, this is
Yeah.
how it goes.
It's still longest running. It opened in 1988 and has performed 13,981 times on Broadway.
Yeah,
Okay.
despite my best efforts.
Yep. Oh, and I was wrong. 2023 is when it closed. You're right.
Okay.
Drop that chandelier.
While newer to the world than Broadway's glittering lights, TV's impact on the world can't be ignored. While some shows like Firefly or The Expanse may not have lasted long enough, some shows have lasted literally lifetimes. What is the longest running scripted show on TV?
It's got to be a soap opera.
That's what I'm
1, Days of Our Lives. 2, General Hospital.
Oh, fuck.
3, Guiding Light. Or 4, Sesame Street.
I don't think it's Sesame Street.
I think
No,
it's
yeah.
Days of Our Lives.
No, because Sesame Street is like 70s it starts, maybe?
Yeah, and I think
Guiding Light, I mean, soaps are from like the 50s, I think.
I'm not sure if it's... I think General Hospital started as a radio play, but...
I think it's General Hospital, because I want to say Days of Our Lives, but I feel like I found out that General Hospital is longer.
Is General Hospital still going?
I don't think so.
I thought it was.
Is it?
I think they all moved online or something.
No.
Yeah.
A lot of them moved.
Most of them have all moved to streaming services.
Shit.
Now.
Well, that makes sense, because then you don't have to be home, during the vacuuming.
I think General Hospital was not the first one, though, because I don't know.
I'm going with General Hospital, and I'll get it wrong, and I don't care.
Okay. You got General Hospital?
I'll go Days of Our Lives.
I'd say Days of Our Lives.
Okay. Where did you go?
I General Hospital.
The correct answer is, in fact, General Hospital. Even talking purely as a TV show, it's still running at 60 seasons right now.
So it was the first soap opera ever?
It was one of the first. It has a 60-season count. Days of Our Lives comes in at 57 seasons, Guiding Light at 57 seasons. Jesus. And weirdly enough, Sesame Street is at 53.
Well,
I wonder if whatever was first before General Hospital just ended.
Well, General Hospital has a leg up because someone said it was a radio show beforehand for 12 seasons.
I love it.
So it could be argued that General Hospital has been on the air for 72 seasons.
Right.
All right.
Well, Luke and Laura
forms.
still going strong.
While art is wonderful, it's not the only thing in life. Another thing in life is, living. A lifespan, keeping on breathing. Some things on Earth get to live much longer than other things. There are even a couple animal species, like the immortal jellyfish, that researchers might actually think live forever.
Oh, those researchers.
While all of the creatures on this list have lifespans that are measured in hundreds or even thousands of years, which one has the longest one? 1, glass sponges. 2, the Greenland shark. 3, the bristlecone pine. Or 4, queen termites.
I'm going with the pine tree. As much as I want to pick Green Lantern, I'm going to go with the pine tree.
I want to go with the shark just because I remember seeing a very hilarious picture of like a super old looking shark.
I don't understand how sponges can count in this. I know it's a creature, or it's a vegetation or whatever. But
It is actually an animal.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, what about this? What about this cup?
I think
I'll go with glass sponges. Sure.
I think the trees, only because I know that there are trees that are like tens of thousands.
Yeah,
of years
exactly.
old,
I'm going with trees, like
that
the larks.
I don't know if it's that specific variety of tree, but
I think this will make me seem dumb, but like, is there some point in the future where the redwoods just die of old age? Is that how it works?
They don't. Redwoods.
Have we gotten there?
I looked this up. Redwoods actually live to about 1,000 to 2,000 years old. The bristlecone pine is on here because it lives longer than them.
Wow. At what point does the redwood join AARP?
Yeah.
Well, so I guess the answer is the tree and not.
Nope.
No, just because it was longer than them.
In reverse order, queen termites live to 50 to 100 years. The Greenland shark lives to about 400 years old as the oldest.
Wow.
So it's the sponge.
Bristlecone pine lives about 5,000 years. And glass sponges can live to 10 to 15,000 years.
Jesus.
And not a dish was done.
So, dear listener, are you older than a bristlecone pine?
I feel it.
Trevor, where can they tell us about it?
Well, we're on Instagram and Twitter as @BigFatGayPod. We're on Facebook as the Big Fat Gay Podcast. Leave us 5 stars there. Leave us 5 stars and a review on your preferred podcast platform. See the articles we talked about at www.bigfatgaypod.com. Also, patreon.com/BigFatGayPod. That's supposed to go before that. Maybe you're finally done listening and you're going to turn on Dropout to watch Chris Grace's special. But the jump scare is not Michael this time, it's him. So watch out.
Oh, watch out.
Well done. That was a jump scare for Chris.